Okay, I'm trying to advance the slide here. There we go. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Darris York and Dr. Del Prado Hill, for inviting me to share with you today as part of the All Hands on Deck initiative. And my presentation is called Co-Teaching, Rebounding Together. And it focuses on maximizing the impact of 2 educators or more working with a group of students. So just to begin today, if you would be kind enough to type your name and your role into the chat box, whether you're a mentor teacher, a student teacher, a teacher candidate, maybe a faculty member or administrator. And that will give all of us an idea of who is in our community today as we talk about this topic. And then as you're doing that, also you'll need something to write with today. So if you could grab a pen or pencil and scrap of paper, or if you just want to type some notes on your computer. Also, just feel free to ask any questions at any time in the chat box. And if you have any comments that you want to add, feel free to do that as well. So once again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me in this session. I'm very excited to share with you the amazing potential of co-teaching to impact and accelerate students' learning. And I also think back to when I was a teacher candidate and doing my field placement and my student teaching. And I remember wondering how I would fit into my mentor teacher's classroom. What was my role? How did my mentor teacher see me? How would the students see me? And you may have had similar thoughts, or you may be wondering these things now. So in any case, we're going to address some of these questions today. And of course, the title of this presentation is a reference to Doug Fisher's session last week on rebounding to accelerate student learning. Co-teaching is a powerful approach to accelerate learning, as you'll see in some of the research data that I share with you in a few minutes. So we'll talk about co-teaching as a means to accelerate learning, as well as a means to support your growth and identity as professional educators and the benefits for mentor teachers. So this presentation contributes to the mission of the PDS All Hands on Deck initiative. You can see some phrases that I bold-faced that I think particularly apply to co-teaching. But we'll come back to this important statement at the end of the presentation to think more specifically about how co-teaching contributes to the mission. So we'll begin today with this anticipation guide. Go ahead and read these statements about co-teaching and mark on a piece of paper whether you agree or disagree with each. So co-teaching is characterized by one teacher teaching one subject and the other teaching the next, and then continuing to alternate subjects. Co-teaching has been found to be useful in special education settings, but it has not yet been researched as part of student teaching. And co-teaching is beneficial for the teachers, but no measurable impact has been demonstrated on student achievement. These will be addressed throughout the presentation today, and we'll revisit this anticipation guide at the end. So to provide a bit of perspective, it's helpful to consider the practice of co-teaching historically. In the 1950s and 60s, there was some experimentation in the US and abroad with teams of teachers working with larger groups of students in which the teachers developed their own specialties. The 1970s saw co-teaching in the context of open concept schools, followed by implementation as a delivery model in the field of special education. With the reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Act, there was an increased emphasis on educating children in the least restrictive environment, leading to co-teaching by general and special education teachers. And this brings us to today, when there's a growing realization of the potential of co-teaching to support all learners through collaboration and differentiation, including co-teaching by teacher candidates with their mentor teachers. So Cook and Friend are well known for their work in co-teaching in special education. They defined co-teaching as 2 or more professionals delivering substantive instruction to a diverse or blended group of students in a single physical space. Heck and colleagues have explored co-teaching as part of a model of student teaching, as two teachers, that is a cooperating teacher and a teacher candidate, working together with groups of students, sharing the planning, organization, delivery, and assessment of instruction, as well as the physical space. So I'll be focusing primarily on co-teaching as part of student teaching, but also part of fieldwork courses. And as we speak, co-teaching is growing in popularity as a rebound approach in response to pandemic learning. So while you may think that all student teaching includes co-teaching because there are two educators in the room, a traditional approach to student teaching differs from a co-teaching approach. In a traditional approach, the teacher candidate begins by observing and gradually takes over instructional and planning responsibilities, often subject by subject, until he or she has complete responsibility. In a co-teaching approach, both teachers are actively engaged in every lesson, in every subject, every day. Exercises and conversations may prepare a mentor and teacher candidates for collaboration and communication. And most of the lessons are co-planned. Lead planning begins with the mentor and then moves to the student teacher, but the mentor remains an active contributor throughout. And finally, mentors model, provide coaching, and make invisible processes visible through thinking aloud about their teaching. These practices maximize the period of student teaching as one of apprenticeship into the profession by a skilled mentor. So therefore, co-teaching is not one person teaching one subject followed by another teaching a different subject, or one person teaching while another sits and passively watches, although we will talk about this more in a moment. I'd also like to suggest applications of co-teaching in pre-student teaching field placements and methods courses. So I'd like to pause here for a moment to have you consider the potential benefits of co-teaching as part of teacher preparation, whether for children, teacher candidates, or mentor teachers. So at this point, jot an idea or two on that piece of paper you have next to you. What might the benefits of co-teaching be for children, for teacher candidates, or even for mentors? And now if you could pop one of those ideas into the chat box and share them with the group, that would be great. So children getting to see and experience different teaching styles for sure. Learning from new teaching styles, absolutely. Co-planning, absolutely, right. So when we're planning together, it's more powerful. We each have different strengths. A greater focus on the children. Excellent, thank you. Absolutely, an extra set of hands in the classroom, super beneficial. So we'll get into some more of these specific benefits shortly. So thank you for sharing those. You can continue to share them as well if you think of others as we go. So the term holistic co-teaching describes an approach that incorporates the stages of co-planning, co-teaching, co-assessing, and then co-reflecting. And I'll be offering some specific scaffolds for each of those stages today. For you theory lovers, and I know you're out there, I'm going to touch upon theories that can be seen at work within co-teaching for a moment. Theory is a wonderful thing because it can help us to make sense out of what we do or what we know works or what we might want to try in our practice. And the theory is the why for the what that helps us to make principled and cohesive decisions about our practice. So I have listed a few theories on this slide. There are certainly others, but these four stand out to me as especially applicable. Lave and Wenger's work on situated learning is present in the sense that through co-teaching, teacher candidates participate actively in an apprenticeship in classrooms, in which they get to take up new ways of acting and thinking and explore their identities as teachers with their mentors and with each other. Teacher candidates do this through not only participating in the action of the classroom, but also through engaging in dialogue with their mentor teacher and their fellow teacher candidates. Through dialogue with others with differing perspectives, we may come to see our thinking in a new way. I'm also drawing upon John Dewey's writing about the role of reflection in learning. Dewey and others advocate a purposeful approach to problems of practice, including reflection upon past action and future action, which allows for more effective reflection and adaptations in the present moment. And finally, Nell Nodding's work in care ethics is important to co-teaching because of her emphasis on modeling and cultivating relationships, which is foundational to learning. So one or more of these might resonate with you, and you might see other theories at work. If you do, feel free to add them into the chat box as we go. But for those of you who are super practical and say, but show me the evidence, here is something for you. Research on the benefits of co-teaching during student teaching for children is striking. Beginning with the benefits self-reported by students, we see they felt they were able to get help when needed, benefited from exposure to two styles of teaching, experienced fewer disruptions during transition, and enjoyed a greater variety of learning activities, among others. And then scholars identified more student participation and on-task time. Studies also show the impact on test scores. This table shows the impact on ELA scores on a state assessment. In each of 4 years, children in co-taught student teaching classrooms outperformed those in traditional student teaching classrooms and classrooms with one experienced teacher. And these results hold for math scores and for students in subgroups, including English language learners, students receiving special education services, and students from various socioeconomic backgrounds. Teacher candidates have also shown benefits. They feel more supported, they experience divergent thinking and dialogue, and are more likely to take risks. And as you can imagine, they also emerge with enhanced collaboration skills. And mentor teachers too benefit. They say that reflective conversation with their mentees allows the mentors to learn and grow. They report being better able to provide accommodations for diverse learners, and they appreciate another set of eyes in the room to problem solve. So there are many benefits. However, co-teaching, as you can imagine, does not come without some challenges. And these would include, at the top of the list, finding the time to plan, the need for professional development in co-teaching. Some have reported continued dependency by teacher candidates, and some issues balancing power and roles in the classroom, and occasional competition between pre-service teachers if they're placed in the same classroom. However, with awareness, we can build in scaffolds to support mentors and candidates to overcome these challenges. So hopefully, I laid out evidence to show you that a co-teaching model is beneficial to all stakeholders. And hopefully, this is leading you to ask yourself, so how does this work? What do I need to know in order to try this out in my field placement, or in my student teaching, or in my classroom? So there are a variety of models that can be used to implement co-teaching, and these are some of the most popular. I will briefly describe each, and I'll give you some examples. And then after that, I'll be providing you with some scaffolds to support you with these various approaches. So one teach, one observe is wonderful when a teacher wants to get some focused feedback on a particular aspect of his or her instruction, or when a mentor wants to draw your attention to some aspect of his or her teaching. This involves active observation and the request on the part of one of the teachers for the feedback, as opposed to a traditional beginning to field work in which you might observe your mentor for a week. This is a purposeful observation of specific lessons for specific items, followed by discussion. And you can also ask your mentor for focused feedback on aspects of your instruction. This slide shows an image of a focused feedback form I created for my methods class. The co-teacher instructing would ask the observing co-teacher to actively watch for one or two items on the list, or suggest another area for focus. This is useful for both the co-teacher being observed and the one doing the observing. For example, the mentor could use this to focus the teacher candidate's attention on asking students to elaborate on answers. Or the mentor might want some new insight into the types of questions he or she asks. So this form, along with others that I'll be showing you in a few minutes, are located in a shared Google Drive folder that will be posted in the chat box for you. One teach, one assist is a common approach for people when they think about co-teaching. But what is key here is the pre-planning for the role of the person assisting to have a maximum impact on student learning. Rather than trying to guess where to help out, this pre-planning helps both teachers to know their roles ahead of time. Of course, you can always improvise, but pre-planning will likely lead to more active participation by both teachers. This can be especially helpful for student teachers who are just finding their place in the classroom. This slide shows a planning form that might be used to match co-teaching approaches, specific actions of the co-teachers, and specific parts of the lesson, such as the modeling and guided practice. So here during the modeling, we have co-teacher 1 thinking aloud to retell the story. We have co-teacher 2 acting as the scribe, and co-teaching teacher 3 is doing some active observation on the types of language that the lead teacher is using. And then during the guided practice of the same lesson, the first teacher might support and guide the children as they work to retell the story with their partner. And then co-teacher 2 might do some differentiation and help kids to retell the story verbally using a felt board before writing it. And then co-teacher 3 might do some more active observation on the types of scaffolding that take place during the guided practice. So station teaching is when co-teachers teach different parts of a lesson. With this approach, it's important that the parts can be taught in any sequence, so that makes it a little trickier. So an example of this might be a lesson on descriptive writing, in which the students move between the co-teachers to write a text by generating alternatives. They might generate adjectives at one station to describe the appearance of an object, and then at another station, they might generate adjectives to describe the texture or the sound of the object. Parallel teaching is characterized by 2 teachers breaking the class in half, or maybe even in thirds if there are 3 teachers in the room, and teaching that exact same lesson to the smaller group. This allows for more individual attention for each student. Just last week, I had a local administrator explain to me how her co-teachers in grade 3 used parallel teaching last year. One teacher, they co-planned the lesson. One teacher would teach it in the classroom to the children present, and then the other teacher taught the lesson to the children who were online. And then the teachers came back together to reflect on the lesson and assess the students' response to the lesson. Supplemental teaching involves teaching at students' instructional levels. So this can be seen in an approach such as guided reading. in which co-teachers might teach small groups of children at their instructional reading levels. In contrast, differentiated teaching is when teachers accomplish the same objective in different ways. For example, one teacher might have students retell a story using a felt board before writing about it, and the other might have children act it out first. Finally, team teaching is when two or more educators lead instruction together seamlessly. This can be challenging at the beginning of a co-teaching relationship, but can definitely develop with time. So at this point, I'd like to invite you to jot down on your paper which approach you might like to try first in your upcoming field placement, or if you're experienced with co-teaching, which approach do you especially enjoy? And after you jot that down, I'm going to actually pop you into some breakout rooms for about 4 minutes so that you have an opportunity to talk about what you wrote down and sort of process what you learned so far about the approaches to co-teaching. Okay, so I'll put you in there now, and you have about 4 minutes to talk about either what you might like to try in an upcoming field placement, or if you're headed into student teaching, or what you've tried in the past, if you're experienced, and what you have found successful. And then I'll pull you back out in about 4 to 5 minutes.
Do you want me to go in one?
Only if we need you to.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
see.
No
No, I
worries.
think we're good. We have, as long as there are 2 people in each room, we're good. Okay.
It's going great.
Thank you. You don't hear the lawnmower outside, do you?
Mm-mm.
My neighbors, just a lawn company just arrived. Okay, it looks like we're back. So you had a chance to talk a little bit about what approaches you've either used or that you might like to use. And can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen again? Okay, thanks, perfect. So now I think we're ready to talk about the nitty gritty. So let's talk about some critical elements for success with co-teaching. So researchers investigated what teacher candidates and mentors felt was important for success. Both groups identified sharing leadership in the classroom. Also, planning together was very important, and respect and trust for one another. Mentors highly valued communicating honestly with one another, even when it was difficult. And teacher candidates assuming leadership and taking over lead planning for lessons. Teacher candidates said that the students in the classroom seeing them as a real teacher was important to them. And they really benefited from the sharing of ideas and materials that came with co-teaching. However, when we learn something new, we benefit from temporary supports or scaffolds to help us achieve the desired result. Just as scaffolds support a building as it's being constructed, scaffolds support new behaviors and ways of thinking as we try them out. So I'm going to share several different scaffolds to support holistic co-teaching I mentioned earlier. These scaffolds are each useful at a different stage in the co-teaching process. They're all loaded into that Google Drive folder that is posted for you in the chat. The first item I'm going to share with you is a set of 3 exercises for mentors and teacher candidates to engage in together. This first exercise is called Compass Points, and it helps participants to build respect and trust and to understand different personality and teaching styles. So participants would read the description of each of the 4 compass points and choose the one that most reflects their personal style. Most people utilize more than one of these styles, but favor one over the others. So now I'd like you to consider your own style for a moment and jot it down on your piece of paper. North likes to act, try things, and plunge in. East likes to look at the big picture and think extensively before acting. South likes to make sure everyone's feelings have been taken into consideration and that their voices have been heard before acting. And West likes to pay attention to the details and likes to know the who, what, where, why, and when before acting. Again, most of us utilize more than one of these approaches, but which one is most characteristic of you if you had to choose? Okay, so next, the participants answer these questions privately. What are your style's strengths, limitations? What do people need to understand about your style? And what do you value about other styles? This is followed by an honest discussion that can go a long way toward facilitating collaboration and respect. So I'm going to give you a minute now to jot down some thoughts to answer those questions for yourself. And then I would like you to have a moment to discuss this again with some people in a breakout room. So jot down some answers and I'll set those breakout rooms for you. And again, we're just going to do 4 minutes. So you'll just have about a minute each to share your thinking. I'm going to join that one breakout room that looks like it only has one person in it.
Oh, and you can feel free to put me in if you'd like.
Or I can actually move him or
Okay.
her. Okay. There. Okay, so now that we've had a chance to talk a little bit about our approaches in the way that we plan and approach problem solving, now we're going to talk a little bit about the ways that we communicate with each other. So I will get that up so you can see it. Okay, so this is another exercise that you can try in preparation for co-teaching. And this one is drawn from some of the work that I've done previously in teacher professional development through instructional coaching, which found that there were two conversational moves that were especially helpful in coaching conversations. And these are revoicing and reconceptualizing. And these can be helpful really in any conversations in which you are problem solving together. So revoicing is restating the speaker's main point in your own words to confirm your understanding. You've probably even heard this term before. And then the beauty of revoicing is that the speaker then has the ability to confirm your understanding or to reshape your partner's understanding if it's not entirely accurate, to make sure that you're being understood. So here's an example of revoicing. So here the speaker says, I'm so frustrated by how my lesson went today. It went right over most of the students' heads. And then the co-teacher might answer, revoicing, by saying, it sounds like your lesson left you feeling frustrated and that you feel that most of the students didn't get what you were trying to teach. So this allows the speaker to hear what he or she has just said from someone else, and then to either affirm it, like, yeah, that's really what I've been feeling, or to revise it. And so the next conversational move is called reconceptualizing. So here the speaker might say, I'm so frustrated by how my lesson went today. It went right over most of the students' heads. So here's an example of how that reconceptualizing would sound. Even though your lesson didn't go as you had originally hoped, I wonder if the assessment data will help us to know if the students accomplished the learning objective and what to do about it. So the new thinking here is that one, sometimes things don't go as we expect, and that's okay. And two, looking at assessment data will help to inform a concrete conversation about how to move forward. So in this exercise, co-teachers practice conversations using revoicing and reconceptualizing about everyday topics. The goals of this exercise are to learn to listen actively, to seek and receive genuine feedback, and to engage and give and take in conversation and employ a variety of communication strategies. The third exercise is to engage in some concrete preliminary planning. Here, co-teachers discuss questions such as, how will we work to have the students view the teacher candidate as a real teacher? What supports and routines will help us plan concretely for co-teaching? And here's a good one. How should we be attentive and present to each other and to the students, even when we're not leading the lesson? And how can teacher candidates engage in some co-teaching practices right away? So the following scaffolds are organized to support each step in that co-teaching process. This is a scaffold you've already seen. This is the co-planning form I introduced you to earlier. After instruction, co-assessment of student learning can be supported through this co-assessment form. It asks co-teachers to think about general trends and how specific students responded to instruction during the guided practice and during independent practice. And co-reflection is an extremely important part of co-teaching. This is a 7-step process that I created that guides discussion for co-teachers about a perplexing or intriguing part of their lesson. They work together to describe that perplexing aspect of the lesson. Then they create a central challenge question and generate alternatives to answer it. Then they might select an alternative or several alternatives, enact, and then reflect again after enactment. If you're interested in this 7-step process, I did post the form you see on the right-hand side of your screen in that Google Drive folder. And it's based on an article that I wrote that's focused on literacy coaching, but it leads you through this process with 2 different teachers. So if you want to see how the process would work, and then if you want to use that form that's been adapted for co-teaching, that might be a nice support. So co-teaching can support the principles outlined by Doug Fisher in his session for the All Hands on Deck initiative. He and his colleagues suggest rebuilding student agency in school by practices such as integrating group work, developing relationships with children, providing timely focused feedback and individual conferencing. And these practices are all supported by having 2 or more teachers in the classroom. The authors also suggest recovering learning through curriculum. They advocate practices such as providing a range of activities in the classroom, which is definitely a strength that you all identified in the chat box at the beginning of the presentation, and working with students to set individual goals. And in the area of recovering learning through instruction, Fisher and colleagues discussed the importance of maximizing instructional minutes, utilizing flexible grouping for acceleration, providing plenty of practice with high quality feedback, and planning assessment guided instruction. So clearly, co-teaching supports our ability to engage in these effective practices to accelerate and rebound student learning, both this year and beyond. So in conclusion, I'd like to return to the mission of the All Hands on Deck initiative and how it's supported by a co-teaching model for fieldwork. Here we certainly see that co-teaching shows we can do more when we work together. By co-teaching with our student teachers and our methods students, we can leverage the resources in the classroom in a full and deliberate manner to address the varying needs of the children as they come back to the classroom. Certainly, this is a sustained effort framed in a co-teaching model, and we're really looking for ways that each stakeholder can contribute so that we can rebound and accelerate student learning. So finally, let's return to our opening anticipation guide. Go ahead and jot down on your piece of paper your answers now that you've heard the presentation in the right-hand column. And you can revise any answers based on what you've heard today. And then we will go through these real quick with a thumbs up, thumbs down to bring us home. So first of all, co-teaching is characterized by one teacher teaching one subject and the other teaching the next, and then alternating. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Absolutely, right? So every teacher in the classroom is involved in every lesson in some way. And we want to think about that really deliberately. So co-teaching has been found to be useful in special education settings, but has not yet been researched as part of student teaching. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down, right? So it has been researched as part of student teaching. We have actually extensive research that shows the impact on children, and that leads us to the last statement. Co-teaching is beneficial for teachers, but no measurable impact has been demonstrated on student achievement. Is that true or not true? Absolutely, a big thumbs down on that one. So we looked both at student self-reported data as well as impact on test scores in ELA. And also, I didn't show you the scores, but they hold true for math and for the subgroups. And if you're interested in any of the research that supports all of those benefits of co-teaching, this PowerPoint has the list of references at the end. It's the very last slide. And I will add this PowerPoint to the folder in Google Drive. So there's the link, but it is in the chat, which would be an easier way to grab that link. So thank you so much for your participation today and for attending. So I invite each of you to register for the follow-up sessions throughout the fall. For each session, this is what we'll be doing. I'll invite you to engage in at least one co-teaching practice or exercise or routine from the presentation, or maybe you want to create your own scaffold to use as part of co-teaching. And we'll come together and we'll share our successes with co-teaching and our challenges. And even if you're like in a student teaching position or a field placement position or a mentor teacher, and you want to come and talk about that idea of identity development as we, as teacher candidates enter the field, how we take up the practices of being professional educators and what that feels like and how co-teaching can support us to do that. This would be a good place to come and discuss that as well. So we'll engage in dialogue and come to some deeper understanding about how we can continue to accelerate learning for kids as we go into this new school year. And so I'd love to thank Kelly Garris-York and Pixita Del Prado Hill for hosting today and for inviting me to share with you. And I look forward to continuing to dialogue with you this coming fall.
Thank you so much, Jen. We would ask that people fill out the session evaluation. We really appreciate your feedback. And Jen, thank you so much. We look forward to those follow-up sessions in the fall. Again, you can register on the PDS website. We really appreciate all your insights and knowledge and practical hands-on materials that we can take and use right away. Thank you.
My pleasure.